and tapussa. You know about that? Now this is according to the Vinaya Pitaka, the two first people who met the Buddha was Tapussa and Ballika. Maybe this is the same Tapussa, or maybe it's a different Tapussa, not sure, but his name is anyway Tapussa. Not sure what that means, but that's his name. So this particular sutta, we're going to kind of continue into the idea of right view, and now we're going to talk a little bit more about the whole idea of sensual pleasures or sensual objects. And this is a very interesting area, and it is actually very important, and we shall see very soon why it is so important. But let me just get started with this sutta, and then we shall discuss it in due course, as they say here. So this is how it goes. At one time, the Buddha was staying in the land of the Mallas, near the Malian town named 𝐻𝐿𝑖𝐿𝑖𝐿𝑖𝐿. And the Mallas, that is the same land where the Buddha attained parinibbana. The Kushinara is actually the capital of the Malians. So that's where we are now. I'll give you a rough idea, perhaps, where this is. And the Buddha robed up in the morning, and taking his bowl and robe, he entered 𝐻𝐿𝑖𝐿𝑖𝐿 for alms. Yes, going in on alms round, receiving your food. Then after the meal, on his return from alms round, he addressed Venerable Ananda. Ananda, you stay right here while I plunge deep into the great wood for the day's meditation. So this was the standard way in those days. After the meal, they would often go into the woods and they would practice meditation. The Diva Vihara is the name for this. And the Buddha would often kind of enter things like the great meditation on compassion. That was one of the things that he was famous for. And kind of having compassion for the entire world, which would presumably motivate him to be a teacher, etc. later on. So this is what happened in these woods and forests around the villages and towns. Yes, sir, replied Ananda. Then the Buddha plunged into the great wood and sat down at the foot of a tree for the day's abiding or the day's meditation. So do you think that just because you go into the great wood, do you think that means you have peace and quiet? It's not as simple as that, right? If you are the Buddha, you're going to be sought after. You try to get away, but it's not always easy. So the householder Tapussa went up to Venerable Ananda, bowed, sat down to one side, and said to him, Honorable Ananda, we are lay people who enjoy sensual pleasures. We like sensual pleasures. We love sensual pleasures. We take joy in sensual pleasures. So at least he's kind of being very straightforward about that. That's good. But renunciation seems like an abyss. You know that old joke? What do you call the abbot of a female monastery? The abyss. No, that was a joke a long time ago. I remember. Maybe I'm not sure if it is politically correct, but that was that was the joke. No. So anyway, so let's forget about that one. So the idea here, this is kind of a very interesting idea, is that for most people, especially those who have never heard any Buddhist teachings or whatever, you are really enjoying the worldly pleasures. The pleasures of the world are really important. That's what we live for, that's what matters to us, and all of these kind of things. And he's being very honest about that. This is what life is all about. What is there if there is no sensual pleasure? For most people, there is nothing. That's all you have. And for that reason, the idea of renunciation seems like an abyss. It seems like a hole, a kind of nothing, a complete a vacuum, a void, basically. That's what it looks like. And so that is that kind of brings up this puzzle in the people's minds. What is there? What do you have when you don't have these sensual pleasures? This is kind of what is the point of this particular sutta here. Why is there this difference? This is why people don't understand why people become monastics. I met many such people in my life. Why, you're a monk? That's kind of crazy. Aren't you just kind of denying yourself all the pleasures of the world? This kind of a standard, quite a common question. And fair enough, you can see why people would do that. And this is because that, it's not just that we enjoy sensual pleasures. When we talk about sensual pleasures here, very often what we talk about is the 5 senses, the whole world of the 5 senses. And once you start to think about it, this is what our life is all about. Everything in our life is about the 5 senses. The moment you wake up in the morning, you see, you hear, you taste, you smell, you touch, and that's all there is. There isn't really much apart from that. And then you go through that your whole day. You go to bed at night, it's still there. You fall asleep, you dream about the 5 senses. You travel overseas, more 5 senses. You go to Mars, still 5 senses. Doesn't matter where you go, there's always these blooming 5 senses. Wherever you go, can't get away from these 5 senses. And this is where this idea of traveling to the end of the world, the very famous Rohitassa Sutta in the numerical discourses, the 4 is number 44, I think it is, something like that. And there's this Rohitassa, and he tries to travel to the end of the world, go to the end of the world by walking. He's going to walk to the end of the world. Now, he was this person who had this his step was like 100 miles, one step, right? So he could walk a long, long way. And then he goes to the Buddha and comes, I couldn't get to the end of the world, even though I kept on walking and walking, there was no end. And the Buddha said, well, that's the wrong way to get to the end of the world, because the world doesn't end by traveling. And we know that now you can travel to distant galaxies, there's still the world. So how do you get to the end of the world? Actually inside. That's the only place where you can find the idea of renunciation. It exists within you. And that's where you can give up those 5 senses. So we are so immersed in the world of the 5 senses. It is almost everything we know. Maybe occasionally you're able to get into a state of meditation where you feel a bit of joy and peace. That is the only time in your life when you are starting to emerge and get out of the world of the 5 senses. The only place to get there is actually within, by practicing the spiritual path inside instead. So it is no wonder that people feel this sense of, what's going on here with this renunciation business. And so, what happens next is the following. I have heard that in this teaching and training there are very young mendicants whose minds are eager for renunciation. They are confident, settled, and decided about it. They see it as peaceful. Tapussa is finds this paradoxical. What's going on here? Renunciation is the dividing line between the multitude and the mendicants in this teaching and discipline, this teaching and training. The multitude being the ordinary people, and the mendicants are this is the dividing line. How can there be such a thing as renunciation? How does it work? What does it mean? How is it achieved? Etc., etc. Householder, we should see the Buddha about this matter. Come, let's go to the Buddha and inform him about this. As he answers, so we shall remember it. Yes, sir, replied Tapussa. Then Ananda, together with Tapussa, went to the Buddha, bowed, sat down to one side. Ananda told him what had happened. This is the telling what had happened, as all the Pali is saying, repeating. That is so true, Ananda, that is so true. Before my awakening, when I was still unawakened but intent on awakening, I too thought renunciation is good, seclusion is good. But my mind wasn't eager for renunciation. It wasn't confident, settled, and decided about it. I didn't see it as peaceful. Or maybe I did see it as peaceful. The Pali is a bit ambiguous, not sure which one is right. It's either I didn't see it as peaceful, or it is I did see it as peaceful. I think both are possible readings. Then I thought, what is the cause? What is the reason why my mind isn't eager for renunciation, not confident, settled, and decided about it? Why don't I see it as peaceful? So let's just stop there for a second. So first we have again the Buddha to be before his awakening. He understands that renunciation is good, seclusion is good. renunciation and seclusion are two sides of the same coin, because renouncing means losing some of your interest in the five sense world. If you're going to live secluded in the forest, something, you have to give up some of that interest. Otherwise, you're not going to enjoy seclusion. Yeah, seclusion and renunciation, two sides of the same coin. They go together. And that's why, ideally, if you really want to go a long way in meditation, seclusion is really the best way to go, because then you are at least removing yourself physically from the five sense world, and then there's a chance the mind will also remove itself. But even though I saw this, I understood this, he wasn't able to feel confident about it. And then when you don't feel confident, settled, or decided about it, it means your mind doesn't really merge into it. The idea is for the mind to make the leap and to actually enjoy that renunciation, to really renounce internally. When you make that leap, that is where the deeper aspects of the spiritual path become possible. Without that, impossible. And then, of course, the Buddha-to-be, he asked, as he always asks, what is the cause? What is the reason why it is not doing this? Then I thought, I haven't seen the drawbacks of sensual pleasures, and so I haven't cultivated that. I haven't realized the benefits of renunciation, and so I haven't developed that. That's why my mind isn't eager for renunciation and not confident, settled, and decided about it. And that's why I don't see it as peaceful. Then I thought, suppose that seeing the drawbacks of sensual pleasures of the five senses, I were to cultivate that, and suppose that realizing the benefits of renunciation, I were to develop that. It's possible that my mind would be eager for renunciation, it would become confident, settled, and decided about it. And I would see it as peaceful. And so after some time I saw the drawback of sensual pleasures and cultivated that, and I realized the benefits of renunciation and I developed that. Then my mind was eager for renunciation, it was confident, settled, and decided upon it. I saw it as peaceful. And so, quite secluded from sensual, the five senses, secluded from the unskillful qualities, I entered and remain in the first absorption, the first jhana, which has rapture and bliss born of seclusion, while placing the mind and keeping it connected. So, very repetitive, right? This is kind of the one of the problems with this Pali text sometimes. It kind of says the same thing 100 times. So the idea here is the idea of understanding the drawback of things, understanding the drawbacks of the five sense world, but also understanding the benefit of the opposite, understanding the benefit of renunciation. And when you start to see these things, that is when you start to understand where you want to lean your mind. And this is tricky. It is very tricky because the Buddha says that with everything in life, there's three aspects to everything in life. There is the asada on the one hand. Asada means the gratification or the pleasure in something. There is the adinava, which is the drawback or the downside of things. And there is the nisarana, which is the escape. These are the three qualities in anything. And with the five sense world, we are experts in the gratification, right? We know everything about the gratification of these things, how wonderful it is, how we, we're going to go down to have a nice restaurants, have a nice meal, and how we're going to go enjoy, I don't know what it is, enjoy whatever in life, enjoy the entertainments and relationships and all these kind of things. We know all about the pleasures of that world, but we are very bad about the drawbacks. And this is why this contemplation of the drawbacks is so important if you want to go deeper on the spiritual path, you want to have success on the spiritual path. So as you contemplate this, and especially as you also see the benefits of renunciation, and the benefit of renunciation is exactly what we see here. It is the jhana state, the deep states of samadhi, when you leave that world and you find something that is far more satisfying, far more reliable, far more happy, far better in all possible ways of the word, than the five sense world. When you see that, then the mind leaps to it, takes an interest in it, and does precisely that. This is kind of the idea here. So to achieve something higher, you need to let go of the lower, and this is what we are seeing in this particular case. Then you enter the jhana states, and then you're getting very close to awakening itself. Now, one of the things that one of the kind of the interesting points here, there's a couple of points I want to bring up right now. And one of them is to understand, well, what is the biggest hindrance to attaining samadhi? What are the things we need to overcome to be able to achieve deep states of meditation? And usually in Buddhism we talk about the 5 hindrances. Everyone heard about the 5 hindrances? Yeah, everyone? Wow, okay, amazing. Okay, that's really nice. So 5 hindrances. One is called the desire for sensual pleasures, ill will. Then you have the tiredness and lethargy. Forget about sloth and torpor. That's a terrible translation. Tiredness and lethargy is much better, or dullness and drowsiness is another one. That kind of is more understandable. Sloth and torpor sound like something out of the 19th century. And then we have restlessness and remorse, and then we have doubt as the last one, right? So these are the 5 hindrances. Now, of those 5 hindrances, the most important one to work with initially is the second one, which is ill will. And the reason why we should work on that one first is because it is the most destructive of all the hindrances. It causes so much problems in our relationships. It causes so much problems in our meditation practice. So it's very destructive, very bad, and good news, it's easy to overcome. So if you haven't overcome it yet, it means you haven't done the easy part. So start with the easy part. It is not that hard to overcome. And I'm happy I talk about this all the time, how to overcome ill will and these kind of things. And I'm happy to talk about it more, but you're going to have to ask me first, otherwise I'm not going to talk about it. So it's up to you. But so that is the most important one in terms of what we should do immediately. But the most important of the 5 hindrances, in terms of the one that hinders us the most from attaining samadhi, it is the first one. The attachment to the 5 senses, the holding on to the 5 sense world, that is the big one. That is really big time bad. And that is what really stops us from going deeper. And this is one of the reasons why the focus on these 5 senses actually matters, especially for someone who is interested in developing this path. So it blocks us from going deeper in meditation. So we need to release a little bit the grip, stage by stage, on the 5 sense world. It does not mean that you shouldn't enjoy yourself in the 5 sense world. You should enjoy yourself in the 5 sense world. You agree with that? You look a bit puzzled. It is you should, and remember that the idea of the spiritual path is that we need people, human beings, animals, we need pleasure. Without pleasure, there is nothing here. And the idea is that if your spiritual path isn't that profound yet, you will still look for pleasure in the 5 sense world. So you should enjoy the pleasures of the 5 sense world. And gradually, as the spiritual path kind of goes up, then you let go a little bit of the attachment to the 5 sense world. But you will notice it is not the 5 sense world as such that you give up. It is the attachment to the 5 sense world that you give up. One of the very interesting things about the Buddhist path is that as you become better at meditation and you get out a very profound state of samadhi, the 5 sense world is even more pleasurable than it used to be here. But you don't have any attachment to it. You don't have any craving for it because the craving and the attachment, that is the problem. But they say in the suttas, if you come out of a 4th jhana state, the ordinary kind of really boring food, porridge or whatever, actually, what is boring food here? White rice, just plain white rice. Really boring. So even the most boring food feels like kind of a king's royal meal, because your mind is so pure. And it is precisely because you don't have craving or desire for it, precisely because you are not attached to it, that it actually is better. If you notice when you eat, if you notice when you eat, take 1 spoon to your mouth. Your eyes are already on the food, waiting for the next one. Have you noticed that? So while you are eating, you're already craving for the next one. You're not even tasting what you're eating, right? This is kind of the problem with this, with the craving business. So when you give up that craving and attachment, you're actually fully with what is happening now. And so you taste the food properly, and that's why it tastes far better when you come out of a deep samadhi state. So the problem here is not so much the five sense world, it is our attachment and craving in that five sense world. It destroys our ability even to enjoy the five senses as they actually are. So our job is to not so much give up the five senses, we have to do that as well, but that's not really the big issue. The big issue is the attachment and craving to that world. And the way to give up attachment and craving to that world is by building up the spiritual qualities. And as you do that, the craving attachment to that world will automatically go down because it is less interesting to you. You understand that craving is just a destructive habit that actually is quite useless. And so you gradually give it up. And so it kind of happens automatically. So what you should do with the five sense world, what you really should do is to stop doing those things whereby you are breaching your precepts, or you are being unkind. So you want to live with kindness in the five sense world. That sets the boundaries for you. That sets the limits to what you should be doing. You stop doing things that are unkind, you live with maximum kindness, and then you are kind of within the acceptable range in the five sense world, and then you build up the good qualities inside, and as you build those up, and as your meditation starts to bite, your attachment to the five sense world starts to go down. This is how it works. So please enjoy yourself. Go to good restaurants. Don't go to the bad ones. This is my idea. I sometimes go to good restaurants. I just was in KL now. They took me to this really nice Japanese restaurant. And it's fine. It's good. It's not a big issue. It is understanding this actually is really important. One of the things that I'm always concerned about as a Buddhist is that we teach these Buddhist teachings in a very bad way. We teach them in such a way that no one is interested in Buddhist teachings. We all seem like a bunch of old farts, and we don't really, we kind of no fun, and it's kind of really boring, whereas all the other religions, they have a lot of fun. But it shouldn't really be like that. It's really the way we are grasping this teaching, which is often the problem. We are allowed to enjoy ourselves as Buddhists, as long as we enjoy ourselves within the bounds of morality, within the bounds of kindness. That is what is important. Then we are on the right track. So this is the first reason why we talk about the idea of sensuality of the five sense world, because we have to give up some of the attachment and desires and build up the other side of it. As one goes down, the other one goes up. But there is another reason why we want to talk about the five sense world. And the reason is that if the five sense world is very, very important to you, if you are really addicted to the pleasures of the five sense world and you want to build up a large fortune and you want to have lots of high status in that world and you want to enjoy yourself to the maximum, if that is very important to you, you will be willing to do immoral things in the name of acquiring things in that world. We see this all the time, people cheating each other, people cheating their husband and wife, people doing bad things, people even killing each other in that world so as to get ahead in that world. And this is just the way the five sense world is. So if you want to be a more moral and kind person, actually reducing the attachment to the five sense world is actually useful, because you understand that your greater happiness as a human being is more to do with living well, living with kindness, thinking about even your future lives. That is really where that is at, whether you're going to be happy or not, and not so much what happens in the five sense world. So it shifts your perspective away from this over-reliance on the happiness of the five senses and towards a deeper kind of satisfaction, which is the satisfaction of practicing the spiritual path. So this is the advantages of letting go a little bit of the five sense world. You become a better human being by doing that, number one. Number two, it starts to give you access to the deeper states of meditation. So this is the idea. So please take these things the right way. It matters enormously that we take these things the right way. Get them wrong, and actually I think we destroy a lot of the faith and the beauty of these teachings. So I'm going to carry on a little bit longer. I'm not sure if 𝐿𝐼 is my friend anymore now, but anyway. Is it okay? All right, okay. Thank you, 𝐿𝐼. That's very kind of you. I've known Eiling for a long time, but every friendship has a limit. Okay. So let's have a look at the shorter discourse on the mass of suffering. And this is also just to remind us a little bit more about the problem of the five-sense world, so as to shift our attention a little bit away from that and towards the bigger issues in life. So I have heard. At one time, the Buddha was staying in the land of the Sakyans, near Kapilavatthu in the Banyan Tree Monastery here. Kapilavatthu was the capital city of the Sakyans, and you can go today, you can find this tiny little place which seems to have been Kapilavatthu, so not very different from what it is talked about in the later legendary literature of Buddhism. Then Mahanama II went up to the Buddha, bowed, sat down to one side, and said to him, "For a long time, sir, I have understood your teaching like this. Greed, hate, and delusion are corruptions of the mind. Despite understanding this, sometimes my mind is occupied by thoughts of greed, hatred, and delusion. I wonder what qualities remain in me that I have such thoughts." So here we have Mahanama II. He is a cousin of the Buddha, and he is a brother of Anuruddha. And it's a nice story. When the Buddha, after the Buddha's awakening, he goes back to his family in the Sakyan kingdom, and when he goes back, many of the Sakyan people are really inspired. Yeah, our cousin is the Buddha. Wow, okay, we should also go forth. So every family in the Sakyan Republic, every family had at least one son or maybe one daughter who would go forth. I'm not sure if they still already had nuns, but whatever, yeah, sons and daughters going forth. But there was one family where no one had gone forth, and that was in the family of Mahanama. So Mahanama's brother was Anuruddha. You know Anuruddha? Anuruddha, yeah, very famous. He became a very famous monk later on, yeah. So Mahanama and Anuruddha, they were kind of saying, well, one of us should go forth, yeah. And then Anuruddha says, well, you know, I have been brought up in such comfort and all these kind of things. It's a really plush lifestyle. There's no way I can be a monk. Mahanama, you go forth. And that's the story. Right? And he's very famous for the story of the nutty cakes? Yeah, okay. So you don't, okay, nutty cakes. Nutty cakes is, Anuruddha, he used to get everything he wanted always. So he would go to his mum and get some cakes, and he would always have cakes. But one day, when he was kind of got to a certain age, there was no cakes left. So his mother said, nutty cakes. Nutty means there are no cakes. And he said, oh, yes, please, I have some nutty cakes. He had never heard the word, there are no cakes, so he thought the word nutty cakes meant the particular kind of cake called there is no cake. There is no cake, right? This is kind of the cake that he thought it was. So this is how plush his upbringing was. He was completely spoiled, rotten. Yeah, he couldn't do anything, never done a single thing in his life, just eating cakes all the time. And then going forward. So then Mahanama says to Anuruddha, well, okay, I'll go forth, but I have to teach you all the chores of the household life. And I said, okay, well, teach me the chores. Well, okay, the chores are, so when the spring comes, you have to go and till the fields, yeah? And till the fields, and after tilling fields, you have to put in the seeds in the ground so that, everything is ready. And then when the seeds are on the ground, you have to let in the water to irrigate the fields. And after irrigating, you have to drain the fields from water. And when the fields are drained, you have to weed the fields, get all the weeds out of the way. Yeah? And when the weeds are out of the way, the crops start to come up, then you have to harvest the crops. And once you have to harvest it up, you have to thrash it to get the grain out of the thing. And once it is thrashed, then you have to winnow it to get all the rubbish out. When you have winnowed it, you have to put it into the silos for storage for the next season. And when they have gone into storage, the next season starts, and you have to start from scratch. And Anuruddha says, well, but when does this stop? And he says, it never stops. Yeah, our fathers and grandfathers, they died while they were doing this. And then Anuruddha said, well, in that case, I will go forth, and you stay in the house of life. So that is the story of how Anuruddha becomes this monk with great psychic powers, and Mahanama, he's still staying in the household life, right? This is kind of I don't know if it's a true story, but it's a charming story anyway. And but Mahanama is a very well-practiced layperson. He seems to have been a noble person. Yeah, he had this insight into the teaching, and he knows that greed, hatred, and delusion are corruptions of the mind. He knows this, and still he is affected by these things. And now he wants to know why. What is going on? So the Buddha replies, Mahanama, there is a quality that remains in you that makes you have such thoughts. For if you had given up that quality, you would not still be living at home and enjoying sensual pleasures. So we can take it that the quality he's talking about here is probably very profound, maybe non-returner or something like that, or perhaps just the jhanas. Maybe if he had jhana states regularly, he might be giving up the household life. But because you haven't given up that quality, you are still living at home and enjoying sensual pleasures. Sensual pleasures give little gratification and much suffering and distress, and they are all the more full of drawbacks. Even though a noble disciple has clearly seen this with right wisdom, so long as they don't achieve the rapture and bliss that are apart from sensual pleasures and unskillful qualities, or something even more peaceful than that, they might still return to sensual pleasures. So the rapture and bliss that are apart from sensual pleasures and unskillful qualities, that's the first jhana, or the higher jhana states. Yeah? As long as you haven't attained these jhana states, or even something higher, you are likely to return to sensual pleasures. Why? Because you haven't got that thing which is beyond and happier and better than sensual pleasures. So this is kind of the idea here. Yeah? Once you get to that point, and once you always have access to the jhanas, which is what the non-returner has, then there's no way you're going to go back to sensual pleasures again. But when they do achieve that rapture and bliss, or something more peaceful than that, they will not return to sensual pleasures. So this is the ending of those sensual pleasures. Before my awakening, when I was still unawakened but intent on awakening, I too clearly saw with right wisdom that sensual pleasures give little gratification and much suffering and distress, and they are all the more full of drawbacks. But so long as I didn't achieve the rapture and bliss that are apart from sensual pleasures and unskillful qualities, or something even more peaceful than that, I didn't announce that I would not return to sensual pleasures. But when I did achieve that rapture and bliss, or something more peaceful than that, I announced that I would not return to sensual pleasures. I announced. Okay, I'm not sure if pachanyasing. I knew, or I realized, I announced. Okay, it's a little bit strange, but anyway, let's just leave that as it is. And what is the gratification of sensual pleasures? So now we're going to talk about a little bit more detail about the sensual pleasures. What is the drawback and what is the gratification? I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. But what you will see is that actually it is very normal. It is very easy to understand what is going on here. It is just a matter of depth of understanding. And then as we deepen that understanding, you can really start to appreciate what is going on. It is not hard to understand this at all, though. So what is the gratification of sensual pleasures? There are 5 kinds of sensual stimulation. What 5? Sights known by the eye that are likable, desirable, agreeable, pleasant, sensual, and arousing. Sounds known by the ear, smells known by the nose, taste known by the tongue, touches known by the body that are likable, desirable, agreeable, pleasant, sensual, and arousing. These are the 5 kinds of sensual stimulation. The pleasure and happiness that arises from these 5 kinds of sensual stimulation, this is the gratification of sensual pleasures. It's quite straightforward. Whenever you enjoy something in the 5 sense world, if it's nice music, nice food, watching a nice sunset, whatever it is in that world that you enjoy, that is the happiness of that five-sense world. Yeah? Simple, straightforward. So what then is the downside? So that's what we want to look at next. And then once we know the upside and then we know the downside, we can kind of make a decision, what we should be doing with this five-sense world. What are the drawbacks of sensual pleasures? Is when a gentleman, or maybe a gentlewoman, or a gentle person earns a living by means such as computing, accounting, calculating, farming, trade, raising cattle, archery, government service, or some other profession. So any kind of profession, presumably. But they must face cold and heat, being hurt by the touch of flies, mosquitoes, wind, sun, and reptiles, and risking death from hunger and thirst. So this is very straightforward. Yeah, we all know what this is like. Whenever I come to Singapore, it's always too hot, regardless, always too hot. And then when I went to the US recently, it was too cold. Because I went to Minnesota and it was minus 26 degrees when I went to Minneapolis, and I was wearing my sandals, no socks, and it was very super duper cold. It was very, very interesting. It reminded me of the good old days in Norway when it was kind of a little. But then I had boots, right? Now I just had sandals without socks. That was a bit more tricky. So I didn't stay out too long, like 5 seconds or something. So, but this is the reality, right? How often is the temperature just right for you? Yeah, if I feel my body right now, I feel it's a bit too hot. That's kind of my feeling right now. Yeah. For some of you, maybe a bit too cold. I see you wearing a little bit of a blanket. Maybe you are on the cool side. So, right. So it's very rare that it's actually just right. We have to deal with the cold. We have to deal with the heat. Especially, of course, in ancient India, there wasn't even any aircon, right? Actually, they had aircon, they had the fans, but that's not quite the same aircon. And of course, you have to deal with these things, yeah? And when you're walking around in Singapore, there's no aircon outside, so you have to kind of deal with that. And this is just the nature of the world. It is never really exactly right. And once you start to notice these kind of things, you start to notice how much displeasure there is in the human body. Enormous amounts of displeasure. We get so used to it that we stop actually feeling these things. But if you go into a state of samadhi and you come back later on, you start to be much more able to notice the displeasure in the body. There's a nice sutta somewhere that says that the physical sensation is an abyss of suffering. There's no end to suffering in the physical body. Yeah? It just goes on and on and on. And this is exactly how we experience things. Cold and heat is only the first part. Then there is the flies, mosquitoes. You don't have many mosquitoes here in Singapore, right? You have, really? I don't think you haven't seen mosquitoes. You've seen nothing yet. Sometimes when I've been in kind of far away, especially in Norway, up in the mountains, and there are swamps, and there's so many mosquitoes, it's like 1 million mosquitoes all the way around you. It's like a black cloud of mosquitoes around your head. That's kind of how many mosquitoes there can be sometimes. But anyway, yeah, even if you have only one mosquito, it's bad enough, right? At night, there's one mosquito in your room, and you can't sleep because of that one mosquito. It's amazing how easily we are psyched out by these little things. Yeah, one little mosquito, and already it really kind of disturbs your night's sleep. And the world is full of little irritating things like that. Yeah, it's everywhere. Everything is irritating. This is because we have this body. This body is irritating. That's kind of the problem with this body. Yeah. So you can have the sun, and then the wind is a bit too strong, and the mosquitoes, and then there are flies crawling into your eyes. And go away, fly, you have no business in my eye. And then you have all of these other things, the creepy crawlies of the world, the centipedes and the scorpions. We have heaps of those down in Australia. If you haven't seen them yet, you can come down, I'll show you some centipedes and scorpions. And snakes, right? And the snakes are lots of snakes. and you risk death from hunger and thirst. I don't know about here in Singapore, not very likely, but sometimes you can see that even now in the world. There is less kind of food going around. Food prices are going up. All kind of weird things happening in the world right now. So you can start to see that maybe, we could come to a place, some parts of the world, surely even today, you can go hungry because you haven't got enough money, even if there's enough food for everyone. It's kind of, you look at the world is so uneven. There are large parts of the world where most of the food gets thrown away. Do you have the same problem here in Singapore with large, incredible waste of food? I think all the wealthy part of the world, I think in Norway, over 50% of the food gets thrown away, something like that, because it goes out on date, and then it goes thrown away straight away, even though it's perfectly usable. And then there's the other part of the world where there is starvation. It's kind of really imbalanced, right? And actually, if you try to do something with it, it turns out to be very difficult, probably. So this is just the nature of the world again. So these are very simple things, but it is a reminder that our bodies are inherently irritating, inherently problematic, inherently bad, and you can only do so much to make your body comfortable. The best way to make your body comfortable? Samadhi. It's the only way, because then the body disappears. When the body is gone, then it is comfortable because it's no longer there. Then it's like your body, because your body is not uncomfortable to me, right? So it becomes like an alien body, and then it's all right. So this is the first one. It's very obvious. It's really kind of obvious, but we need to think about it to really be able to see how irritating it is. There's a very nice simile in the sutras about the leper. You know this illness of leprosy? That you sometimes find even today in some very poor countries like India. And leprosy is like the sores you get on the body, really incredibly itchy sores. And sometimes there can be maggots in the sores, and apparently it's extremely, extremely itchy. So if you are a leper, you will go to a fire, and you will deliberately burn yourself in that fire to get rid of some of the itchiness. And the idea is that when you do that, actually it feels pleasurable to you to burn yourself because it takes away some of the itchiness. But if you are perfectly okay, right, and you don't have any problem, if you are that leper, you go to the doctor, you get your leprosy sorted out, would you then go back to burn yourself in that fire? No way. But the fire is just as hot. The feeling is exactly the same. It's just that when you have leprosy, your perception of the world is so distorted, you don't really know what is going on. In the same way, our perception of our body is often so distorted, we don't really understand what is going on with the body. And this is kind of the problem here. So it needs kind of investigation, understanding, to be able to see what is happening with the body here. Let's go on to the next one here. This is the drawback of sensual pleasures apparent in this very life, a mass of suffering caused by sensual pleasure. That gentleman or gentlewoman or gentle person might try hard, strive and make an effort, but fail to earn any money. If this happens, they sorrow and wail and lament, beating the breast and falling into confusion, saying, "Oh, my hard work is wasted, my efforts are fruitless." This too is a drawback of sensual pleasures apparent in this very life, a mass of suffering caused by sensual pleasures. Has it ever happened to you that you have worked really hard and no one really appreciates your hard work? It happens all the time, doesn't it? Is there anyone here it hasn't happened to? It happens to everyone. Sometimes you work really hard and you're kind of hoping maybe someone will notice what I'm doing, but no one notices it, right? Or you put in a lot of effort into school and you still, I don't know, are there any dum-dums here who try really hard but still fail at school? There's always people who don't do so well at school, right? And even though you try really hard, then your parents get upset because you haven't, especially here in Singapore, I hear parents don't like that when you get bad grades in school. And then you feel terrible again. So much hard work, so much trying to make your boss be happy with you, and then the boss overlooks you. And instead the boss sees the person who is very good at, saying sweet things or whatever, right? Isn't that often the case? It's about how you speak to the boss is more important than when you actually do in your job sometimes. And so very often our work kind of fails in this way. You work really hard, put in all that effort, nothing happens, and then your house burns down. This happens in Australia all the time. All that effort for no reason. So you can never guarantee that you will succeed in this life. Again, you try hard and you succeed in earning the money. So now you succeed. But they experience pain and sadness when they try to protect it, thinking, how can I prevent my wealth from being taken by the rulers or bandits, consumed by fire, swept away by flood, or taken by unloved heirs? And even though they protect it and ward it, rulers and bandits take it, and fire consumes it, and the flood sweeps it away, and unloved heirs take it. So even when you try your very best to protect what is yours, still it doesn't work out. Yeah, still there is a problem. And sometimes, you have all these locks on your apartment door, and still the burglar gets through, right? And then you think, oh no, I put all these locks on my door. Maybe I didn't put enough locks on my door. I should put more locks on my door. Sometimes it's interesting how we fail to use those kind of situations for our own wisdom. Yeah, often we think in the wrong way. We think the problem isn't that it's the nature of things to be stolen. No, we think there wasn't enough locks on the apartment. It's the wrong lesson we learn. We learn the wrong lesson. The point is that regardless of what you do in the world, regardless of how many guards you have, you've got 100 guards and 2,000 locks. And what happens? The guard steals the things, right? That's what happens. So we learn the wrong lessons. And this is, I think, such an important part when it comes to the idea of insight in Buddhism. Instead of learning the lesson that we should try to fix up something that actually is unfixable, that is the wrong lesson. We should learn that this is the nature of things. The nature of things is that things go wrong. They cannot be controlled ultimately. That is the real lesson. So anyway, so still you sorrow, you wail and lament, beating the breast, falling into the confusion. What used to be mine is gone. Yeah, what used to be mine is gone. Is that true? If someone steals it, is that true? Maybe, maybe not. So is this your first time here? No. You've been before? Okay, good. Okay, just check. Is it the first time you come to my talk? No? Okay, okay, good. So I'm glad to hear that. So this is a very interesting sentence. Yeah, what used to be mine is gone. Because what is interesting about this, there is a fundamental flaw in this thought. Yeah, it seems like it's a right thought because someone has stolen in your apartment or taken your car or whatever, or stolen your water bottle. Maybe that's kind of the one you want to hold on to now. But there's a fundamental flaw in this argument, and this is the word mine. That is the problem. Because the idea is that when something is yours, you think that you have a right to it. You think that you are in control, that you're in charge, that no one should take it. But the problem is that it was never yours in the first place. It is never yours in that sense that you think that it is yours, that you can control it. And this is this beautiful simile of the borrowed goods that you see in the suttas all the time. Actually, not all the time. You see it in the suttas occasionally. And it says that the right way to think about things in the world is not as yours, but as borrowed goods. You have it until the thief steals it, and you don't have it anymore. Yeah, that's kind of how it works. You have it until the fire burns down your house. That's what happens in Australia. You have it until it's gone, basically. That's how long you have it. And you don't know when that's going to be. Sometimes it happens when you die. Sometimes it happens before you die. It's gone. So this is a very beautiful way of thinking about things in your life. Everything is really just borrowed goods. You have it for a while, and then it's gone again. And so the idea of mine, this is a distortion of perception. Yeah, things aren't yours in the way that you think they are yours. They are yours in a much more temporary sense. And when you do that, you stop clinging, you stop attaching, you stop craving for things that you actually are inherently out of control. This is the lesson again from these things. Slowly, 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 it seeps in there. Whoa, okay, time going fast, okay. This too is a drawback of sensual pleasures apparent in this very life, a mass of suffering caused by sensual pleasures. Furthermore, for the sake of sensual pleasures, kings fight with kings. Aristocrats fight with aristocrats. Brahmins fight with Brahmins. Householders fight with householders. Mothers fight with her child. Child with a mother. Father with child. Child with father. Brother fights with brother. Brother with sister. Sister with brother. Friend with friend. And the list could probably be endless, right? Everyone fights with everyone. That's kind of the idea here. Once they have started quarreling, arguing and disputing, they attack each other with their fists. Stones, rods, and swords, resulting in death or death-like pain. This too is the drawback of sensual pleasures, apparent in this very life, a mass of suffering caused by sensual pleasures. This is the reality of the world. The small quarrels in the world are often over things. People fighting over their inheritance. Does that happen here in Singapore? Yeah, it happens everywhere in the world. I haven't been to a country where people don't fight over the inheritance. The more wealthy people are, the more they fight over the inheritance. You'd think it'd be the other way around, but it isn't. The more you have, the more you want, the greater your greed. People go to war in the world because of sensory things. Yeah, I think a lot of the wars in the world are at least in part because of sensual things. Like all the wars in the Middle East probably have to do a little bit about controlling oil. Yeah, or controlling oil is about being able to enjoy bigger economy and these kind of things. So a lot of the arguments, the violence, and the things that we see in the world are because of the five senses. I think it is quite obvious when you start looking at it. When I have a brother and sister, I used to fight with especially with my sister. Boy, I was really bad. My brother was too young, so he was like the cute young brother. But my sister, when you're quite close in age, there's always a danger there. So I hope she has forgiven me for all those fights that we. So this is the way things are in that world, yeah, or whatever. Furthermore, for the sake of sensual pleasures, they don their sword and shield, fasten their bow and arrows, and plunge into a battle massed on both sides, with arrows and spears flying and swords flashing. There they are struck with arrows and spears, and their heads are chopped off, resulting in death or death-like pain. I think if your head is chopped off, it's more like death. Right? I think death-like pain is not going to... Good luck with surviving having your head chopped off. Yeah, so this is like the wars. Wars are bad news. Okay, then there is more stuff about torture and all kind of things. We will look and leave that to one side. This too is a drawback of sensual pleasures apparent in this very life, a mass of suffering caused by sensual pleasures. So now we have looked at all the obvious flaws of sensual pleasures, but now comes maybe the biggest one of all. Furthermore, for the sake of sensual pleasures, people conduct themselves badly by way of body, speech, and mind. When their body breaks up after death, they are reborn in a place of loss, a bad place, the underworld and hell. This is a drawback of sensual pleasures to do with lives to come, a mass of suffering caused by sensual pleasures. And this is the really scary one. What happens in this life we can sort of deal with, but when you start to take the sensual pleasures too seriously, and you start to misconduct yourself because of those sensual pleasures, then you are really creating this enormous potential for suffering in the future, where you actually have no idea what's going to happen to you after you die. And this is kind of, to me, always been the scary point when you come to the end of your life. You're on your deathbed, and on your deathbed you realize everything has to go. Everything has to go in your life. All your possessions have to go. All your friends and family members, you have to leave them behind. All your status that belongs to this world has to go. And finally, your body has to go as well. There's only one thing that is left when you die. There's one thing that you take with you into the future. There's one thing that you own, and that is the karma. And the kamma, what is that? The kamma is the quality of your heart. So know the quality of your heart. Know how you feel about yourself. If you feel good about yourself, if you know that you have lived well, then you have good kamma, and you will carry on in a good way in the future. Yeah? That is what you take with you. And this is what you can find out to some extent in your meditation practice. If you can come to at least a little bit of peace in mind, a place where you can feel reasonably good about yourself in meditation, then you know that your mind is inclining towards those good qualities because they are accessible to you. Yeah? You know you are on the right track. But if on your deathbed you have to let go of everything, but you have also lived badly, so you have created a bad mind for yourself, that is really terrible. You know that you have lived really badly, done all the wrong things, everything has to go, and the future is dark because you have lived in the wrong way. That creates enormous kind of confusion on your deathbed, and guaranteed you're going to feel really bad about yourself as a consequence. And then it feels like you have wasted your life. It feels like you had an opportunity to create a secure future for yourself, but you wasted the opportunity. And then on your deathbed, you're going to be confused. You're going to feel terrible, and you're going to feel that you wasted the opportunity. So this is what happens when you take and understand the 5 sense pleasures in the wrong way. This is the result of that. So, enough about the 5 sense world. Let's have another break. 10 minutes, Eiling? Yeah, 10 minutes, so we'll see you back again at 4:30 here. I think I have enough.